Today, we will be back-testing this 5-minute scalping strategy by online trading signals scalping strategy and see how profitable it is. We will be back-testing it with an account size of $1,000, and we would be covering 200 trades during our back-testing. And at the end of the video, we will be ranking it on our strategy spreadsheet. So make sure you watch the video to the very end to fully understand what errors to avoid if you must use this strategy. Do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you found this amazing. Without wasting much of the time, let's dive into it. Okay guys, so for today's strategy, we will be looking at the Bitcoin United States dollar, and we are on the 5 minutes time frame. For this strategy, we would be applying 3 indicators to our chart, as we would later be explaining what these indicators would be identifying in the market. So bring up your indicator panel and search for the parabolic SAR, as this is a time and price technical analysis tool, primarily used to identify points of potential stops and reverses. In fact, the SAR in parabolic stands for stop and reverse, so we would be using this indicator to determine our points of entry while using this strategy. And for the second indicator, go ahead and search for the 10-in-1 different moving average by Himanshu, as the name already gave an insight of the features of this indicator, as it is a combination of different types of moving averages, where you can select which kind of moving average you want according to your need. It consists of 10 moving averages, none of which is fixed by default, as you can change the properties of any MA according to your will. And now for the last indicator on the list for our strategy, is a top indicator for many years on TradingView, and it's no other than the squeeze momentum indicator by Lazy Bear. Now we have our chart looking like this. Let's quickly go over the settings for this strategy, as we would later go through what each and every one of the indicators will filter for this strategy. So for the first indicator, go ahead and double-click on the EMA. On the input section, we will be using just MA1, and make sure it's on EMA. Then lastly, we would be changing the input to 100, and do not forget to change the color to white for better visualization. When you are done, click on the OK button to fully apply the settings on the indicator. Now, this indicator will be determining the general trend in the market, as we would be using it to identify when we are in a bullish trend, and when we are in a bearish trend. As when the price is above the EMA, then no, we would be taking only buy trades. Likewise, when we see the price below the moving average, then we would be taking only bearish trades. Now for the SAR, we won't be adjusting anything, as we would be using it on its default settings. This indicator would be identifying when we need to enter trades, for long or short positions, as when we see the blue dot above the price action, then there are more sellers in the market than buyers, and when we see the blue dots below the price action, we have more buyers than sellers in the market. Now let's quickly head over to the squeeze momentum, to fully understand why we added it to the chart. For the settings, we would be using it as its default settings as well, but know that the use of the momentum indicator may be in several ways. When we see that the red bars are becoming less in size, and changing the color from light red to dark red, this means that there is a possibility of a price reversal soon, as well as when we see that the green histogram are becoming less in size, and changing the color from light green to dark green. This means that there is a possibility of price reversal soon, as we would be using this to confirm our conditions for an entry in any trade. Now let's quickly go over the conditions for a buy and sell signal, and at the end of the video, we would be back testing our strategy to better understand if we should use the strategy or not. Now for a buy signal to be valid, we need to have the price action sitting above the 100 EMA, and we would want to see the last SAR above the candlestick be above the EMA when we get the first SAR below the candlestick as our signal to buy. We would then wait till price closes above the body of the last candlestick with the SAR above it, as we would check the squeeze momentum to see if we have the dark red or green histogram available, before we move on to place a buy stop order at the peak of the trigger candlestick. So here, we see we had our conditions met, as we have the price above the EMA as our first confirmation, and we could note that the last SAR above price was at this candlestick, before we got our SAR below the candlestick candlestick. We then had to wait till price cross and close above this trigger candlestick, which we see we got on our next closed candlestick. As our momentum indicator is also confirming the entry, we would then go ahead and place a buy stop order at the peak of this trigger candlestick. As our stop loss is at the lows of the last candlestick, we had our SAR above, and our take profit is at 1.25 times the risk, and we could see the trade was successful. Please note that we do not take a buy trade if price action is below the EMA, and also if we have our last SAR above the candlestick, close below the EMA before we get the SAR below the candlestick. So here, we see we had the price below the EMA, as we also had the last SAR above the candlestick, close below the EMA before we got the SAR below the candlestick. We would therefore be avoiding this trade, as it is against our conditions for a buy trade. Now let's quickly go over the conditions for a sell trade, before we move on to backtest our result, and also give more possible errors to avoid while using this strategy. Now for a sell trade to be valid, it is exactly the opposite of our buy entry. We need to have the price action sitting below the 100 EMA, and we would want to see the last SAR below the candlestick be below the EMA. When we get the first SAR above the candlestick as our signal to sell, we would then wait till price closes below the body of the last candlestick with the SAR below it, as we would check the squeeze momentum to see if we have the dark green or red histogram available, before we move on to place a sell stop order at the bottom of the trigger candlestick. So here, we see we had our conditions met, as we have the price below the EMA as our first confirmation, and we could note that the last SAR below price was at this candlestick, before we got our SAR above the candlestick. We then had to wait till price cross and close below this trigger candlestick, which we see we got at this candlestick. As our momentum indicator is also confirming the entry, we would then go ahead and place a sell stop order at the bottom of this trigger candlestick. As our stop loss is at the highs of the last candlestick, we had our SAR below, and our take profit is at 1.25 times the risk, and we could see the trade was successful. Also note that we do not take a sell trade if price action is above the EMA, and also, if we have our last SAR below the candlestick, close above the EMA before we get the SAR above the candlestick. So here, we see we had the price above the EMA, as we also had the last SAR below the candlestick close above the EMA, before we got the SAR above the candlestick. We would therefore be avoiding this trade, as it is against our conditions for a sell trade. Okay traders, I hope you fully understand the conditions for a buy and sell trade. Now let's go ahead and backtest this strategy, with an account size of $1,000, as we would be covering 200 backtested trades. We would also be risking 1% of our account size on each trade. Now without wasting much of the time, let's dive into it. Okay guys, we just finished the backtest for this strategy. Please note that we used $10,000 for this strategy, but we still maintain the 1% risk of account size on each trade, as our backtesting tool would not calculate in cents. So as we move on, we could see the result for this strategy is fair, but I would not recommend using this strategy, although it gives a lot of wins, but its RR ratio is poor, as the strategy gives a lot of losing signals as well. We had a win rate of 53% on 200 backtested trades, having won 106 and lost 94, which made us 29% return on investment, and I found those trades set up within 5 weeks, and also, as at the moment, the lowest tested strategy on the channel. Although it's still better than some strategies you would see online, I wouldn't recommend using a parabolic SAR as a filter trade though. So try using more advanced indicator to identify more pullback and reversal points on a pair. Okay traders, don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe. See you in the next one.